Hello, BookTube. I have some books I want to show you for Friday reads. These are some of the things I'll be reading today, Friday. I figured for a change I would take Friday reads literally on its face as just the reading for today. First one is Reread. I got a lovely Penguin trade paperback of a book that I read last year. This is, you can make that out, Shooting Ghosts. The subtitle is A U.S. Marine, a Combat Photographer, and Their Journey Back from War. And it is, let me see here. Through the unpredictability of war and its aftermath, a decorated Marine sergeant and a world-trotting war photographer become friends. Their bond forged as they patrolled together through the dusty alleyways of Helmland province and camped side by side in the desert. But when Sergeant T.J. Brennan was injured during a Taliban ambush, he and conflict photographer Finbar O'Reilly returned home, each to face the fallout of war in his own way. Their friendship offered them both a shot at redemption. And I know that sounds like a Hollywood treatment, and I could easily see this being made into a Hollywood movie. But the book was extremely gripping, so I'll be reading it again. I read it last year and quite liked it, but I'll be reading it again today. Sorry, I'm trying to concentrate on these books while also concentrating on a crazy dog. so I want her to destroy only packaging. The packaging is bad enough because it covers the floor in garbage that I have to clean up. I don't want her to destroy any books. And I'm gently trying to teach her that is not permitted, but I'm going to stop her when she tries to do that. Then the next book is something we saw in another video just today. This is He Held Radical Light by Christian Wyman. This is a slim book of the author's reflections on encounters with various contemporary poets. It's 100 pages long. It won't take me any time at all to do, and it might be interesting, might be fun. Then the next one will definitely be fun. It's not quite a reread because I didn't finish reading the advanced copy that I have. I read a chunk of it and then got distracted by probably work. I probably had a deadline that popped up and I just didn't get to it. But the chunk that I read about 100 pages and absolutely loved it. I'm looking forward to digging in. This is Click Here to Kill Everybody by Bruce Schneider. I think we saw this already on this channel. The huge beginning chunk of it is fantastic. Let me, just in case you don't recall or there are new people here, let me read a bit of let me read a bit of what this is about. This is, since its birth in the 1970s and 80s, the internet has accelerated towards greater connectivity between ever-increasing number of devices. The internet now links not only computers and phones, but also cars, medical devices, power plants, manufacturing equipment, tractors, refrigerators, toys, and more. This is the Internet of Things, all in capital letters, the IoT. And it promises to deliver speed and convenience for smart technology to nearly every corner of our lives. But there is a darker side to IoT. Security risks, from previously unthinkable levels of surveillance to lethal new forms of terrorism the world has never faced before. And this book is all about that. Traditionally, the most prevalent cyber threat has been the theft of or destruction of data. These attacks, such as the 2017 hack of Equifax that allowed thieves to steal the social security numbers and personal data of more than 145 million Americans, could be massive in scope, but they rarely represent an existential threat to their victims. You lose your information, but you don't die. The IoT changes that. In the age of ubiquitous internet, security researchers, government agents, and hackers have stalled moving automobiles, attempted to control implanted medical devices, accessed the GPS equipment of ships at sea, exploded oil pipelines, and destroyed machines processing fissionable nuclear materials. Even minor attacks can produce cascading effects. In 2003, a massive blackout covered the northeastern United States and Canada, leaving nearly 60 million people without power. Though the computers directly controlling the power grid were not attacked, computers critical to sounding the alarm in case of failure were possibly knocked out by the blaster worm. And this book is all about that. And the title is not hyperbole, because those of you who've been following this subject in the U.S. news, cybersecurity experts have warned for the last few months, in fact all summer long and the spring before, that, for instance, Russian state operatives have free access to key power grid databases and according to one official who was giving testimony on Capitol Hill, they're in and they're allowed to move. They can move around freely. That was his terminology. That these hackers can move around freely on the power grid, just looking at what they can do. Keep in mind how dependent most people in the Western world, in the developed world, anywhere, East or West, are on power grids like that. Keep in mind how dependent they are on that, and how thin a line it is between that dependence and anarchy. The old phrase used to be that that the difference between a settled society and the Lord of the Flies is 3 consecutive meals. That if someone is forced to miss 3 consecutive meals, not because they're working, not through any fault of their own, but because the infrastructure fails to provide them, then they riot and start preying on each other, and there is total chaos and a need for armed control to get it back. That's a pretty thin line, and this book is all about that. It's just terrifying. It's terrifying in a good way, but it's terrifying. And speaking of terrifying in a good way, that was also this. This is by Tony Veal and Mike Cook, and this is a book about Twitter bots. And this is from, I think, MIT Press. Is this MIT Press? Yes, this is MIT Press, and they're eggheads over at MIT. They have a press. It does lots and lots of good books, but can we just pause for a minute and give a little round of golf clapping to the person who designed this cover, because that is just about fantastic. In fact, let's find out who did design that cover. The cover design was by Molly Siemens, and I will try to remember to find her and leave a link to wherever she shows her work, because that is awesome. But this is a book all about Twitter bots. And so this is a kind of a technological drift in the books that I'm reading today. So this is, let me read you just a bit, because the pub sheet is surprisingly praiseworthy of these. We think, in the common parlance, we think of Twitter bots as purely bad. But wait till you hear this. Twitter bots are software programs that tweet messages of their own composition. Some are as simple as feeds, like the hourly bong from Big Ben, or words from a dictionary, while others respond to certain words or combination of words in others' tweets, and still others use machine learning to generate screen images. It was estimated in 2017 that about 15% of tweets are bots, and I have had tech people, including one in Silicon Valley, tell me that if you want an accurate number, double that. Most of them are annoying ad bots designed to get you to click on a link or picture. Although I'm sure that the Russian GRU has practiced many of these techniques, that is not the purpose of this book at all. Tony Veal and Mike Cook introduce us to the world of Twitter bots in all their variety and look at how they are constructed primarily as a creative endeavor, arguing that for their importance in a changing social media scene and as a new vehicle of creative expression. Twitter bots introduces us to some of the programming tricks and linguistic methods behind the creation of bots, and what it is that makes these methods interesting and effective. So this is not going to be a Chicken Little screed about how the Twitter bots are going to kill us all, which will be refreshing in a way. Certainly, it will open my eyes. I haven't read this book at all. Haven't even dipped into it, so I don't know how well it's done. But I want to learn about this other side of Twitter bots, because all I know about them is all that any American knows about them, which is that they played a huge role in the 2016 presidential election. And since that election puts in power someone who has nearly unfettered access to the United States military arsenal, including its nuclear arsenal, you know, the stereotypical view of Twitter bots is that they could kill us all. So I'm going to be fascinated to learn in this book. I'm going to be fascinated to read it and learn a lot. And then this next one, also technological, but in a much, much broader sense, and so good. I read it in advanced copy. I studied the advanced copy that I had in order to write a review. But I'm going to read it again. I got a finished copy. I'm going to read it again just for the fun of it. And it is one of those rare books, there's almost none, that I can just recommend across the board to all of you, no matter what you like to read. Even if you don't like to read nonfiction, this is a work of nonfiction that you won't hesitate to read. You'll carry it with you. You'll skip things to keep reading in it. That's how good it is. That's how all access it is, even though it's nonfiction. We might have seen it on this channel before. It's by Ryan North, and it's called How to Invent Everything, a survival guide for the stranded time traveler. And its conceit is that a corporation has invented a personal time machine. You sit in it and you pick your era and off you go. And you can enjoy all the wonders of the past and open your mind and see all sorts of things that aren't recorded in the history books. But in the extremely unlikely event that something goes wrong with your time travel device and you end up stranded in the place that you're visiting, you might need a one book to rule them all volume on how to get your bearings and maybe how to improve things, because if you find yourself in 4th century Athens, no one there is going to know anything about steam power or germ theory of disease or flywheels or anything like that. And this book is all of that. It breaks down everything that you need to know. Absolutely everything. With lots and lots of pictures. There's a huge section on how to domesticate animals and which ones are good for it. There's a huge section on how to domesticate plants and which ones are good for it. There's all sorts of graphs and charts to simplify the information that you are live in right now, that is your personal inheritance right now, but that you might not be able to reproduce from memory. If you have this book with you, you have a fighting chance. There is you. That is everything about you in very simple one-stop terms. There's all the basics of your computer. There's all the basics of virology and your physical health. There's all the basics of road building and building. It's just, this is everything all in one. And that might strike you as incredibly wonky, but what a book. It's so funny and so inventive, and it never lets up. Not all the way to the end. It never lets up. So my review is going to strongly recommend this book, but I also couldn't pass up the opportunity when I got the finished copy today. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to recommend it to you as well. So I may not shut up about this for a little while, but books like this come along very seldom. And when you're a nonfiction fan as big as I am, you just grab onto them. The kind of a nonfiction book that you can just hand to anybody is very rare, and this is one of them. So I'm gonna now that I'm not pouring through it, making notes and everything, I'm just gonna luxuriate in just reading it again from front to back just for pure pleasure, and then I'll put it aside for a little while. And then the last thing I want to show you today is a kid's book. It's a lovely thing. It's Margaret Wise Brown, the author of Goodnight Moon, and this is At Home in the Barn, with illustrations by Jerry Pinkney, who does a great job. The illustrations in this thing are just absolutely beautiful. Look at that. There's winter coming on. We've got a blue jay, the snow flying in the air. The gist of the book is that the barn is a warm and inviting place. And I only glanced through it. I'm going to read it today probably. So that is. I also need to research whether or not At Home in the Barn by Margaret. I find it hard to believe that this is its first printing. Obviously, Margaret Wise Brown is a huge name in kids' books. I'm curious to know what earlier versions of this might have looked like. But one way or another, I think I lucked out. I think this is about as pretty as a kid's book can get. So we have At Home in the Barn, Margaret Wise Brown. Not going to take long to do. How to Invent Everything, which is a reread. Also not going to take long to do, but I'm going to enjoy it. Then Twitter Bots. Brand new. I'm fascinated by the subject. Absolutely fascinated. Then Click Here to Kill Everybody. All about the Internet of Things. Then He Held Radical Light by Christian Wyman, which is a book about contemporary poets. Also not going to take long to do. The top and the bottom one will take probably 45 minutes total between them, and How to Invent Everything won't take much longer than that. And then Shooting Goats, a reread about an unlikely bond in wartime, and how the bond spills over into peacetime and back home. This is my Friday reads, more or less. I mean, I have to do one or two mandatory reading things, but they won't take long either. None of this will take very long. So there you go. That is my Friday reads. As usual, I want to know what you're doing today or all weekend. I may do a Saturday and a Sunday reads too, just for the fun of it. But one way or another, I'll wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.